the difference between fact and truth. And it's an important distinction. In fact, we might even say that the opposite of truth is fact. The opposite of true is false. The opposite of truth is fact. And that's because a fact is a correct description, a true description of how a thing is. So when you state a fact, what you're saying is true. But a fact is the way a thing is, not necessarily the way it should be, or the way it's meant to be. A truth is the way a thing is meant to be, even if right now it's not that way. So a simple example would be, the fact is, it is true that Mashiach doesn't come. Every day we wait, every year we expect, every time something happens we say, now, this is it. This for sure. After such an event, no question, now Mashiach is going to come. He doesn't come. He's not here. So if you want to talk facts, there is no Mashiach. That's the fact. But the truth is, Mashiach is coming. Why is he coming? He has to come. So no matter how long he doesn't come, and the fact is that he hasn't come, well, then there's a problem with the fact. But the truth doesn't change. So this is the difference between truth and fact. Truth means the thing as it ought to be, as it must be, and the fact is the thing as it happens to be. So if something happens to be a certain way, that's not truth. It's true. It's not truth. So facts are real, they're valid, they're genuine, they are true, but it's not the truth. When something is the truth, no matter how long it takes, eventually the truth must also become the fact. So when a truth and a fact coincide, that's called holy. When the fact does not match the truth, that's called unholy. There's holy and there's unholy. So now, our challenge is, how do we develop a finer sense of reality? There are people who are very intimidated by the facts. You give them a fact, that's it. They can't think past it. It's a fact. Look at the facts. Of course, you have other people who can't handle facts. They're totally out of touch with reality, and they're dreamers, and everything is going to be exactly the way they think it's going to be because they think it's going to be, which is also unhealthy. What is our perception of reality? It's not the same for all people. And that's what the subject or the topic of trust hinges on. What does it mean to trust? How do you trust? What do you trust? When do you trust? When shouldn't you trust? So in God we trust can be taken very literally, in a narrow definition of the concept. In God we trust means that there isn't going to be a nuclear explosion because we trust God that He's not going to let it happen. I'm not afraid to get on a plane because I trust that God will take care of things. Let's broaden the definition a little bit. Trust in God doesn't just mean He'll protect me from getting hit by lightning. Trust in God has a much broader application. For example, part of trusting in God means trusting that goodness is really good and that evil is really evil. So it's not just believing that God is in control. That's the minimal, almost childish trust in God. But a deeper trust in God is to trust in God's values, so to speak. That if God says this is good, then this is really good. And then there are people who have this uncertainty. Things are vague. Good is good, but is it really good? It's important to be good, but how important is it? Somebody tells me that they decided they're going to keep Shabbos. Everything except answering the phone. I said, why? I'm surprised because the only part of Shabbos I like is that I don't have to answer the phone. So why would you choose to keep every other part and not? She says, because when the phone rings, it could be an emergency. I said, if it was an emergency, why would anybody call you? What are you, a doctor, a policeman? What are you? No, but somebody might be calling emergency. I said, if it's a real emergency, they wouldn't call you. And if they called you, it would be a wasted call. Because what could you do anyway? No. I have to answer the phone. What is that? It's a lack of trust. Not a lack of trust in God that no emergency will happen. You know that people won't call you in an emergency. But maybe they will. But maybe. And that destroys the confidence, the certainty, the clarity. And we do that in so many things. I know I have to be good, but do I really have to? Somebody called up a talk show. They were talking about medical issues. And this doctor calls in and he says, do you know what I've noticed? I've noticed that people who are religious don't get sick as often. And the caller said, yeah, I've heard that, but there's no way of measuring that. He says, yes, there is. People who are religious don't come to doctors as often. Why? Not because they don't have aches and pains. Not that they have fewer aches and pains. They don't go to doctors as often because they don't believe in being healthy. A person who doesn't believe in God believes in being healthy. For him, it's a religion. What is your highest value in life? For many people, it's got to be healthy. That's it. You got to be healthy. Take care of yourself. Every conversation ends with, take care of yourself. It's a religion. When you have no other belief, you have to take care of yourself. Whereas a religious person, it's not, he trusts that God will cure his toothache. That's not kosher. If you have a toothache, you're supposed to go to a doctor. But what if you have a little bit of an ache? You're going to run to the doctor? It'll pass. It's nothing serious. No. But if you worship your health, I felt something. Better check it out. They go religiously to a doctor. Why? Again, not because they don't trust God to take care of them. They don't trust in any other value. There's nothing more important. There's nothing more valid that they should be doing when they need to take care of their health. That comes first. Why? Because that they know for sure. Everything else they're not so sure. They don't trust their values, their moral values. They trust only in their health values. That has become their trust. So not believing in God means not believing in godly values. So you have to develop other values which you're going to believe in like a religion. And that's why you cannot have a rational discussion about liberal or conservative values. because those are two religions and they don't talk the same language. In psychology, if you take away morals, if you take away godly values, or what used to be called valueless therapy, what is the person supposed to rely on? If they don't fall back on moral certainties, what do you fall back on? So they say, well, we're open-minded. No, you're not. You can't fall back on open-minded. You fall back on something immovable and therefore reliable. What do you consider immovable? What do you trust? Now, when people really firmly, blindly, zealously believe in God, that's a very intense trust. People who don't believe in God have an equally intense trust in something, because you can't live without it. You can live with many uncertainties as long as you have one absolute certainty. But with no certainty in your life, you cannot function. You're paralyzed, you're catatonic. So everybody has an intense trust. But in what? So psychology, without absolute values, has to fall back on personal inner strength, strength of character. What are you going to fall back on? Your own value. You are valuable. So what has become the creed of pop psychology? Self-image. The solution to every problem is a good self-image. The cause of every problem, poor self-image. How do you cure a person with problems? Build up their self-image. Give them more self-respect. Now, why is that so necessary? Why is that worshipped? Why do we attribute so much power? It literally makes it into a god. This is what's going to determine your fate. Doesn't that sound like God? If you have a good self-image, life will be good. Bad self-image, you're doomed. Why do we have to rely on our own personal strengths? Because we don't have strength coming from the outside. So when a person says, if I were humble, if I was really humble, and if I didn't assert myself, and if I didn't put my foot down, and if I didn't have strength of character, if I didn't have a strong will, people would be taking advantage of me all the time. A woman says, I live out there in the world and people are always hitting on you and, you got to be strong. So I have to keep up a good self-image to protect myself. It wasn't always that way. In the good times, people were not vulnerable because they were meek or timid. They weren't vulnerable because they had strong moral certainties. I may be weak, but what you're not allowed, you're not allowed. Not because I say so, not because I can put my foot down, but because God put his foot down, and therefore it's no go. So moral certainty used to be the strength you fell back on. When you take that away, you've got to replace it. So what was it replaced with? Self-reliance. Nobody's going to do it for you. You've got to do it yourself. You're on your own. Either you take care or you're going to be abused. That's very unfair to a human being. A human being is weak. That's our nature. We're vulnerable. Now we've got a whole new vulnerability. Now a mosquito can kill you. I mean, how much more vulnerable can we get? So we're very vulnerable. We're very dependent creatures. We need conditions to be just right, otherwise we suffer. Now you come to a person who has these weaknesses and has these vulnerabilities, and you say to him, you know what you can rely on? Your strength. That's not fair. It's not even nice. It's cruel. It's like saying to a handicapped person, if you don't get up and go yourself, nobody's going to do it for you. Who are you talking to? You're talking to a handicapped person. Why are you saying such things? And then you convince him that yes, he can do it. Because he's going to try and he's going to fail. Because he's handicapped. So unless we offer a person a strength outside of themselves, then how can their weaknesses be compensated for? Somebody once said, it takes a village. The notion that one woman can raise a family of children on her own, that's a cruel and unfair judgment. It takes a village. It always has. No one person has enough gifts and enough value, enough strength and enough wisdom to be able to raise a house full of kids. Nobody has that. And to suggest to somebody, why do you need to be helped? Can't you do it yourself? That is such a cruel thing to say. Of course you can't do it yourself. It takes a village, a tribe, whatever you want to call it. Extended family, at least. So what's weighing on us so heavily today is that we are expected to do superhuman things. And we've bought into it. We are now convinced. If I can't do this myself, then I'm a failure. No one has ever done this by themselves. I like this idea. The Alter Rebbe hired a teacher for his children. Now wait a minute. The Alter Rebbe is the ultimate teacher. But he needed help with his kids. Is that a failure? Of course not. That's ridiculous. So to say to human beings who are weak and vulnerable, to say the thing you can rely on, the rock of your strength, is you if you tried hard enough, if you were healthy enough. That's so cruel. And it's so untrue. It's so untrue. God intentionally created a world where no one can take care of themselves by themselves. Everybody needs somebody. And if that's embarrassing, if that's discouraged, we're finished. So what does it mean in God we trust? Let's break it down. What is a hedonist? Simply, a hedonist means a person who indulges in a lot of physical pleasures. That's not a hedonist. That's the average person. You don't get an ism for eating a lot. I mean, there's no degree that comes for that. If you're going to make an ism out of it, hedonism, there's got to be more to it than the fact that you eat. Everybody eats. A hedonist is someone who does not recognize reality. Nothing is real unless he can taste it. What you can taste, that's real. That's the yardstick. That's the measure. What makes something real to this person? The taste or the feel. So he's a hedonist. He is into hedonism because in his perception, reality is what you can touch or taste. That's it. Everything else is iffy. Everything else is suspect. Can't trust anything else. So hedonism is a perspective or a perception of reality. Then there are people who are emotional. the emotional type. What is an emotional person? Not somebody who has feelings. Everybody has feelings. An emotional person is a person to whom nothing is real unless it stirs his emotions. Tasting something, that's nothing. Touching, that's nothing. Convinced logically, that's nothing. But if it touches my heart, that's real. Oh, that was real. You're in touch with reality when you have an emotion. Those things you have no emotions for, they're not real. The hedonist will say, I don't believe in God because I can't touch him. Can't touch him. And if I can't put my hand on it, it's not real to me. The emotional person says, I can't believe in God because it doesn't feel like anything to me. Leaves me cold. So it's not real. Yeah, I know the arguments, proofs, blah, blah. God, that's all talk. It's not real because I don't feel it. And on the other hand, what I do feel is not just important to me. That's reality. So a teenager, for example, who falls in love, and you say, no, don't do that. This is not for you. You don't need this. You're too young. You're not going to get married anyway. Don't do this. You don't need this. They don't know what you're talking about. They have finally discovered reality, and you're not talking real. You're not making any sense. What do you mean, don't love him? You're out of touch with reality. I do love him. So there's your reality. And if you think that I could live without him, you don't know reality. And that's why you can't argue it. Not because they're too excited, but because they are now in touch with their reality. You can't fight a person's reality. Now, what is an intellectual? An intellectual doesn't mean a person who is very smart. An intellectual is not someone who has a lot of information and knowledge. An intellectual is someone to whom nothing is real unless it's logical. And when something is logical, that's reality. Emotions, come on, that's frivolous. Tastes, touch, smell, that could be very misleading. What is real? What is really real? A convincing argument or the facts. That's it. That's reality. What does it mean to trust in God, according to all of this? To trust in God doesn't mean you rely on him. To trust in God doesn't mean you're confident that he won't lie to you. That's not what it's about. Trust in God means the intellectual finds reality in logic. The emotional person finds reality in feeling. And the hedonist finds reality in taste or touch, in the senses. The person who believes and trusts in God finds reality in godliness. If it's godly, it's real. Everything else is iffy. Oh, that expression, what's right is right. What does that mean? It means what's right is reality. Right is right. What does that mean? That's reality. Not that's my values. Not this is my religion. This is my finer self. No, that's reality. Everything else, you can take it or leave it. So what can't you negotiate with? The hedonist can't negotiate with his senses. What his senses tell him, that's reality. You can't mess with that. To the emotional person, what his heart tells him, that's reality. You can't negotiate with an emotion. To an intellectual, logic is reality, and you can't negotiate with it. For the person who trusts in God, Godliness is the reality. You can't negotiate with that. So what does it mean to trust in God? To trust in God means you find reality outside of yourself. That's what makes this trust different from all the others. Because all the others are within you, whether it's your logic, your emotion, or your senses, or even your religion. The belief in our religions, that's not trust in God. Trust in God does not belong to a religion. So believing in your religion, trusting in your religion, that's another form of reality perception, but it's not trust in God. Trust in God means God is the reality, even if I'm not sure about my religion. Because religion can be negotiated. So what is special about trust in God? It is a reality that is outside yourself. And for that alone, it is more virtuous and more valuable than all the others. Because looking for reality in yourself is a trap. Sounds like some kind of a circular reason. You are discovering reality in yourself by whose perception? Your perception of yourself. That is highly unreliable. When you trust in something, you're finding something more reliable than yourself. How can it be yourself? So part of trusting in God also means trusting in the truth of His commandments. I have to use this example. Stalin came along and said, no more Judaism. No more Shabbos. No more mikveh. Over. Finished. Never again. Anybody not working on Shabbos, off to Siberia. Anyone builds a mikveh, shot by a firing squad. That's it. It's over. It's not going to be any more. And every Russian, including many Jews, became his agents to make sure that there would be no Shabbos and there would be no mikveh. In every apartment building, there was at least one person who was an informer to the government. And it could be your own brother. Because what they would do, they would take a guy aside, invite him for a meeting at the KGB headquarters, and they would say, you like your children, don't you? You want to enjoy them for many years, don't you? Okay, all you have to do is tell us what's going on, that's all. Come once a week, tell us who comes, who goes, and what's going on. And your children will be safe. Now, what is this person supposed to do? So he becomes an informer, even against his own brother. It's hard for us to imagine the intimidation, the paranoia of a Jew in Russia when he had to suspect his own brother. What's even worse, and they knew this, they would invite a guy to the office, to the KGB office. They would talk to him for 20 minutes and send him home. That's it. Nobody will ever talk to him again. You were at the KGB office? Now you can swear up and down on a stack of Bibles that you did not agree to be an informer. They can't take a chance. So you are now enemy number one. And this is what people lived with. Remember a Russian who came back in the 70s, came out of Russia, and he was laughing about himself one day. He says, I've been here for a month now, but soon, I'll get over the habit of standing with my back to the wall. Wherever he would go, he had to have his back to the wall to make sure there's nobody behind him. It was terrible. Now, in spite of all of this, people kept Shabbos, and people built mikvahs and went to the mikvah, and when they closed one down and exiled or executed the guy who built it, they opened another one. Why? How? It's a matter of perception. What is reality? To most people, reality, 120 million Russians out to get you. That's reality. Reality is Stalin. That's reality. And if that's your reality, you can't keep Shabbos. Can't. And you don't feel guilty about it. Because it's not your fault. You just cannot. So if you can't, you can't. Fortunately, there were enough people in Russia whose perception of reality, not their devotion or their religion or their martyr instincts, simply their perception of reality. Their reality was Shabbos. You don't work on Shabbos. And you got to go to a mikveh. That was reality. Stalin? Yeah, what are we going to do with this guy, Stalin? The informers? Be careful. Watch out for the informers. But you got to keep Shabbos. We think, there were refuseniks. A refusenik is somebody who didn't like what he saw and rebelled. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about people who rebelled against the government and insisted on being religious. That's a different thing. That's a whole different experience. We're talking about people who had no intentions of rebelling. They didn't want to rebel. They didn't want to make any points or prove anything. They weren't interested in anything. But Shabbos, you don't work on Shabbos. Yeah, but what about Stalin? Oh, that's a problem. Stalin's a problem. When is he going to die already? But Stalin's come and go. Shabbos is Shabbos. So what's reality? Reality is Shabbos. That's called trusting in God. Not that they trusted that if they kept Shabbos, God would protect them. That's childish. I've been good. How do I get my candy? And if I don't, whoa, hey, I was good, and I didn't get my candy. Or whatever reward. That's not what was going on there. So there was one chassid who was caught by the communists, and he was exiled, and he was imprisoned, and he was tortured, and he was bigger than life. And when somebody asked him here in the States after he came out, somebody said to him, how did you do that? Where did you get such courage? And in all sincerity, he said, what else could I do? What else could you do? I have a few suggestions. Work on Shabbos. Don't go to the mikveh. What do you mean, what else could you do? That never occurred to him. That's not real. So when he kept Shabbos, it wasn't because he was refusing. It wasn't because he was rebelling. It wasn't because he was a martyr. It wasn't even because he was religious. It never occurred to him. Now, there's an expression that says, self-sacrifice involves jumping off the roof. So if you have enough devotion and you're willing to sacrifice for your values, you'll even jump off a roof for your values. But if somebody were to say to you, you really believe in your values? You really? Are you willing to do anything? And you say yes, it's fine. Then jump onto the roof. No amount of devotion can get you to jump onto the roof. Off the roof is easy. So self-sacrifice means if I have to jump off the roof, I'll jump off the roof. But if I have to jump onto the roof, it's not possible. That's unreal. So it's like when you come to this chassid and you say to him, how could you do that? How did you manage to keep Shabbos in labor camps? Labor camps. You know what they are? Places of labor. You can't take a day off in a labor camp. Like this comedian says, when you go to a doctor, you never get to see the doctor. You get to wait. You can't not wait. It's the name of the room. It's a waiting room. You got to wait in that room. This is a labor camp. You can't not labor in a labor camp. He managed to keep Shabbos for 8 years. They said, how could you do it? He says, how could I do what? He said, where did you get the courage and the strength to do that? He said, what choice did I have? So you say, well, you could have worked on Shabbos. And to him that sounds like, yeah, why didn't you jump onto the roof? You refuse to jump onto the roof? You're a martyr. I'm not a martyr. I can't jump onto a roof. I can jump off the roof, can't jump onto the roof. So you were willing to die rather than work on Shabbos? Well, that's jumping off the roof. But work on Shabbos? That's jumping onto the roof. Never occurred to me. So it's a perception of reality, not a stubbornness of conviction. Probably have heard this story before. But there was a guy from a scientist in Russia back in the old bad days. He desperately wanted to get out of Russia. And being a very intelligent, educated man, he was convinced that there's got to be a way. Everybody said the Iron Curtain, can't get out, impossible. No, there's got to be a way. He worked on it. And he was a very intelligent man, highly educated, scientist. He found out that there's a train that goes from Moscow to Switzerland, to Zurich. Of course, they check every car of that train over and over again. There's no way. Except the refrigerated train, the freezer car. If he could smuggle himself into the freezer car, they only check it once. Then they seal it, and they don't open it again until they're in Zurich. Problem, of course, is once they seal the car, there's no oxygen. And it's cold. So he sat down and he did the calculations. The trip takes so many and so many hours. A person uses so much and so much oxygen per minute. He did it very carefully. He calculated. He figured it out. And he decided that he could just make it. He'll survive if they don't make any unscheduled stops. Unscheduled stop, he's dead. He smuggled himself into the car. And the train took off. And he was very excited. He's going to get out of Russia. But being a scientist, he kept a logbook. Every hour, he wrote down his condition. When he arrived in Zurich, he was dead. They found him dead in the car. And they found his record book. Hour number 1. Breathing fine, blah, blah. Hour number 2. Breathing has slowed down. Respiration slowed down. He checked everything. Hour number 3. Getting a little lightheaded. Hour number 4. Starting to get chills. Number 5. Memory is going. Whatever. And then it just petered out and he was dead. The amazing part of this story is that the car that he smuggled himself onto was not a refrigerated car. It was not sealed. He thought it was. He was so convinced of the reality of his calculations that his mind killed him. Because when they found him, they did every kind of autopsy. They could have said, what killed this man? He died from whatever it's called, asphyxiation. But why? There was air in the car. It wasn't sealed. So what is your reality? And if that's your reality, then what do you mean? Hey, try breathing. Take a deep breath. That never occurred to him. His reality was that he was in a sealed car and there's no air. So, well, just on an off chance, take a breath. What do you mean off chance? You mean jump onto the roof? Well, try. Have you tried? Don't be ridiculous. Try to jump onto the roof? So you come to this guy and you say, you know, you'll live longer if you work on Shabbos. Work on Shabbos. Didn't you ever consider maybe? No, did you ever consider jumping onto a roof? What your reality perception tells you, you don't negotiate with. And that's one of the reasons that a doctor has to be so careful. There's a famous joke. What's the one thing you don't want to hear your surgeon say? Whoops. Yeah. Or, what is that? You don't want to hear those words because it'll kill you. It will kill you. So if a doctor checks a patient and grimaces, doesn't even say anything, just, that's it. You've killed your patient. Not to mention the doctor who says, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're dead. That is so sinful. Because if there was a chance that the person wouldn't die, you have now killed him. Because when the doctor says you're dead, so what are you going to do? Not die? Of course you're going to die. The doctor said. In the olden days, when a doctor said, "Ooh, I don't know, you're very sick." So you don't know, so maybe I'm not so sick. But today the doctor whips out the X-ray and shows you that you have to die. How do you argue with that? You can't argue with an X-ray. It's right there. You're dead. So you die. What are you going to do? Jump onto the roof? Our perception of reality is in our thought. And you don't fight reality. You can't fight reality. The question is, what is reality to you? An X-ray? Somebody once came to the Rebbe, very hysterical, and said, Rebbe, the doctors found a tumor. The Rebbe said, the doctor who found it should lose it. In other words, if he can find it, he can also lose it. So what is the reality? Yes, there was a tumor there. What is that? The truth? No, that's just a fact. Fact is, there's a tumor there. But what is a fact? A fact is the condition as it happens to be. It happens to be this way, so let it be the other way. Who says you have to have a tumor? Positive thinking, in the real sense, is focus on something more reliable than what you've been thinking about. So what does it mean you've been thinking negative? You've been thinking thoughts that are not very reliable or helpful. Well, don't do that. Think about things that are reliable and that are helpful. When a person, God forbid, finds out that he's very ill, in addition to being ill, he is now also nervous. He's now also frightened. He has now lost his confidence. Positive thinking will take away the fear or the panic or the loss of confidence. It's not going to take away the tumor. It's meant to cure the psychological part of your illness. There are times when if you get rid of the psychological part, the physical part goes away also. But if you want to go deeper than that, you have to tap into a strength that really is stronger than a tumor. And that might be more than your imagination, even good imagination. So the power of positive thinking basically means that you underestimate the power of your mind. Because your mind is a healer. So if you're waiting for your lungs to heal, and they don't seem to be able to heal, so you tap into the power of positive thinking. You say, look, my lungs can't heal themselves, let's see if my brain can, because the brain is more powerful. So you use your brain to heal your lungs, and it often works, because the brain is more powerful than the lungs. So if you really can focus and have a strong mind, you can tell your lungs to get well, and they will. You can tell a tumor to go away, and it will go away. So what is the power of positive thinking? It simply means your mind is a better healer than your lung. But what if your mind can't do it? So you go to something stronger. But something stronger can't be your imagination. That's not stronger, that's weaker.
Isn't it saying for a miracle to happen, you need to believe in a miracle? If you don't believe in a miracle, the miracle cannot happen. But eventually, if you believe in a miracle, maybe a miracle will happen. Maybe it will not, but maybe it will. Isn't it a little bit saying that?
If you don't believe in a miracle, maybe it will happen, maybe it won't. If you do believe in a miracle, it'll probably happen. Because the miracle comes from a place, a power, that is stronger than nature. That's why it can heal, because it's stronger than the illness. Now, either that will happen or it won't happen. But there's something you can do to make it happen. Tap into it. Don't wait for it to come to you. Go to it. So when you believe in the miracle, it means that you're connecting yourself to that healing power. If you're connected, then it's going to affect you. More likely, more consistently than if you ignore it, and then it might happen, it might not happen. See, that's what I'm saying. Trust in God doesn't mean you think He's powerful. That's not trust. Trust in God means you trust that He wants health. You trust that He is a healer, that He wants life, that He's against death. That's what you have to trust. Not just that He's capable. He's not asking you to trust Him of being capable. So if you decide, I don't know if God will give me life, He won't give me life, whatever He does is fine. You're not trusting Him, because He said He wants life. God is into life. He's not into death. And for us to say, well, you never know. He might be into life, might be into death. Then you don't trust Him, because He said, choose life.
So then why does He choose death sometimes?
I have no idea. But let's get to the definition of what does it mean to heal. The need to heal obviously comes when there's an illness. So healing means reaching deeper into your resources until you find an energy or a power that is stronger than your illness. That's called healing. Often that happens spontaneously. Your system is healthy, it's attacked by some kind of an illness, give it a couple of days, your system will get rid of it. Why? Because your system is stronger than an illness. What happens when it's not happening spontaneously? You've got an illness and your system is not getting rid of it. Well, then you go to a doctor. And what does the doctor have? The doctor has ways of stimulating a strength in your system that you couldn't stimulate by yourself. That's true of psychiatric treatment or therapy as well. The therapist helps you tap into a stronger part of yourself that can resist or overcome the weakness or the illness or the disturbance. Sometimes medicine doesn't have any method for getting to your deepest strength. And it's not happening spontaneously. So how can it happen? You ask God, and God will heal you because He can stimulate the strongest part of yourself. Then there are times when there is no part in you that is stronger than your illness. So no amount of stimulation is going to help. In fact, it'll kill you. Any more stimulation, and it's going to kill you. Then you tap into God, not into your latent strengths, but into God's strength. Then if you heal, it's called a miracle. But there are other things. If you get a tzaddik to give you a bracha because you've tapped into his strength, he has more life than you do. So if you're tapping into his life, you've got the ability to overcome your illness. Or if you have a group of people who you've tapped into, or you're getting energy from them, a group of people has more energy than one person.
Can somebody outside of you have an effect?
Yes. The question is, the healing is coming from them, not from you. The question is, how does their energy get to you? Of course they have energy, but how can you benefit from their energy? So usually we think you benefit from their energy in the knowledge that they're praying for you, that encourages you, it boosts you, whatever. That's one way. One of the ways of getting their energy is by being consciously connected or aware. There are other ways. So it's not the only. And that's why when they do these tests where prayer helps, they don't tell the person that he's being prayed for. And it helps anyway. The reason for that is that if you can connect to them by your thought, then they can connect to you by their thought. So if thought is a bridge that can carry or convey energy from one person to another, then it can be your thought or it can be their thought. Either one will work. In fact, that's what I think this power of prayer really is. I'm not sure that they've proven that prayer helps. If somebody is praying for another person, it doesn't matter what their prayer is. It doesn't matter whether they're praying to God. They're thinking about the patient, and that heals. Because thought is a connection. So like a transfusion. You've got the patient lying on one gurney, the healthy person on the other, and there's blood going from the healthy one to the ill. Thought is exactly the same thing. Only instead of conveying blood, it conveys life, energy. The tests don't prove that it's the prayer because it could be the thoughts. Just the fact that people are thinking of you heals you.